Hey guys, and welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be doing my first electoral college map projection for the 2020 presidential race. So in this one, I'm going to be going through every single state and putting it on a spectrum between being projected as safe for the Democrats all the way over to being safe for the Republicans and everything in between, and doing a little bit of a discussion on each state. Of course, some states probably going to require a little bit more discussion than others. So we're just going to jump right on into it, starting out there in the Great North in the state of Alaska. Been very consistently strong for the Republicans in presidential races. We would expect that to continue here in 2020. And then we have the state of Hawaii, one of the most progressive states in the country. Going to be very safe for the Democrats with those 4 electoral votes. And then we go out to the West Coast and some more very safe states for the Democrats, being Washington, Oregon, as well as California. And then we move over into the Rocky Mountains, and this is where we start to get some more safe states for the Republicans. Very deep red here in the state of Idaho, as well as Wyoming and Utah. Now, if we take a look at these 3 particular states, Trump has much better favorables and approval numbers in Idaho and Wyoming in contrast to Utah, but still you'd expect all of these to be very safe for Trump. He was able to win them rather considerably back in 2016, and these are some of the more conservative states in the U.S. So then we move over one state here to Nevada, a more battleground type state. Now, this one has been trending towards the Democrats in recent election cycles. Clinton was able to take the state by around 3.5 or so percentage points, and the Democrats did very well in Nevada in 2018, flipping a Senate seat and then also winning the governorship in statewide races. The demographics are continuing to get better for the Democrats here in the state of Nevada. You could maybe even make an argument to have it one step over from lean Democratic, but I'm going to be putting it in the lean Democratic category for now, as these statewide races can still be fairly competitive, but it is in the advantage right now of the Democrats. Moving down to Arizona, and here throughout the American Southwest, the Democrats have been making really strong gains, and this is showing up obviously in states like Nevada, where Clinton was able to win, as well as Colorado and New Mexico. But Arizona is starting to be a bit more competitive. We saw a 2018 Senate race where the Democrats were able to flip this one. It looks like they could possibly be flipping another Senate seat in the state of Arizona in 2020. We expect a very close presidential race here. And if we look back at 2016, Trump won by a pretty small margin over Clinton. Going to be actually leaving this one not as a lean for either the Democrats or Republicans. Going to be leaving this in the true toss-up area here and leaving it gray. But then we move over to New Mexico. This has become a very safe state for the Democrats. Going to be having that one be dark blue. And then also the state of Colorado. Even more so than Nevada, I think it's one step more safe to the Democrats than Nevada. In contrast, there it has been trending for the Democrats over the past decade and has becoming a pretty safe state for them in these statewide elections. So now we're going to go into the Great Plains states and Upper Rocky Mountains here. And basically all of these results are going to be safe for the Republicans, except a few that I'm going to be talking about in a bit more detail. So the ones that are very safe for the Republicans are going to be states like North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, Nebraska, the statewide result, the 1st congressional district, and the 3rd congressional district. Whenever I talk about Nebraska, I always say the 2nd congressional district first, because it is the more competitive and interesting district in the state. And then moving down, Oklahoma, also very safe for the Republicans in statewide races. Now, the 3 results that I haven't filled in yet here, Kansas, Montana, and the 2nd congressional district in Nebraska, these are, I don't think, quite in that severe red category as being safe for the Republicans. However, Montana as well as Kansas going to be one step below that. Now, we saw back in 2018, the Democrats won statewide, of course, winning the Senate race in Montana with Tester keeping that one. And then also they won the governorship in the state of Kansas, a statewide race. And then also just taking a look at Montana and Kansas, Trump's approval numbers aren't quite as strong as they are throughout the rest of this region of the country, and could potentially be in the more interesting range and competitive depending on who the Democrats put up and nominate. 2 states definitely to keep an eye on. Not necessarily the most important states given their relatively low number of electoral college votes, but still in an area where I'm not going to be putting them completely all the way safe for the Republicans. And then moving down one state to Texas. A similar story here in the American Southwest, where the Democrats are gaining. It's still leaning towards the Republicans. Now, we saw in 2018, Beto O'Rourke had an extremely competitive Senate race against incumbent Ted Cruz. We expect this to be potentially relatively interesting, maybe within around 5 or so percentage points. And if the Democrats put up a really strong candidate here, maybe even going right down to the wire. But you still have to give this state as a lean to the Republicans. Maybe sometime over the next decade, this will become a true toss-up result. We'll have to see how that plays out in the upcoming election cycles. But still in 2020, going to be giving this one as a lean to the Republicans. All right, now moving over into the Midwest, where we have a ton of interesting results to talk about. Actually, before doing that, just want to quickly talk here about the 2nd Congressional District in Nebraska, an extremely competitive district we saw in 2018. And a very progressive Democrat, without much help from the DCCC, was able to make things extremely competitive with her Republican counterpart that she was running against. And again, that was without a whole lot of help. I believe it was within around 2 or so percentage points. Certainly a district that is in that competitive range, and we would expect it to be very competitive in 2020. Going to be leaving it in the toss-up category as a true gray result. All right, so now moving over into the all-important Midwest, starting with Minnesota, which is probably the second most consistently Democratic state in the Midwest outside of Illinois. So first going to be putting Illinois as solid blue, and then Minnesota as one step below solid blue. Then going to a state like Iowa, which has shown it can have huge swings in presidential elections. Obama was able to do very well in the state of Iowa in his 2 victories in 2008 and 2012. And then Trump was able to dominate Clinton here back in 2016. Now we saw the Democrats do pretty well in the state of Iowa in 2018. They won 3 out of the 4 congressional districts, and they almost did a clean sweep of the state. They just came up just a little bit short there in the 4th congressional district, which is the most conservative of the areas in Iowa. But we feel like this is going to be a very close race in 2020 and going to be leaving it in the gray toss-up category, expecting it to be highly competitive. And Trump might be hurting his cause in a state like Iowa because of his farming tariffs that have hurt a lot of farmers in this particular region of the country. That's also something to keep in mind. Moving down, the state of Missouri, it's been trending towards the Republicans, has been very safe for them in recent election cycles. They just flipped the Senate seat there in 2018. And what was otherwise not necessarily a great election cycle in the 2018 midterms for Republicans, a state where they did have success was Missouri. Also, Arkansas going to be very safe for the Republicans, as well as Louisiana. Now, Louisiana is a little bit more interesting because we actually do see the capability of Democrats to win statewide here. It's kind of almost like if we contrast it to the other side, you have a state like Massachusetts, which is very consistently for Democrats for their Senate races as well as presidential. But then you'll get a Republican governor, for instance, in Massachusetts, just like you can get a Republican governor in Louisiana. But in presidential results, very safe, likely there for the Republicans, as well as Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia. And this is pretty much the area of the country where Trump has very strong and consistently positive approval numbers. It's pretty much this particular area of the nation. And then moving up, probably the most conservative of the Midwestern states is the state of Indiana, and that's going to be also safe for the Republicans. It helps that Mike Pence is their vice president. We have seen that Obama was able to win the state of Indiana back in 2008, but it also feels like this has been trending more towards the Republicans in recent election cycles, just like the state of Missouri here in the Midwest. And another state that you can throw into that pile as being trending a little bit more towards the Republicans is a state like Ohio. Going to be putting that one as a lean right now towards the Republicans. Of course, we saw Obama was able to win the state in his 2 tries in 2008 and 12. Trump doing very well for himself in the state of Ohio in 2016. The Democrats were able to keep their Senate seat with Sherrod Brown, who did pretty well in his statewide re-election bid, but this is still going to be a lean for the Republicans. You could even make the argument to put it one step over where I currently have it. And then we go into the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. These are 3 states that are generally consistent for the Democrats in presidential races. However, it was the turning point in the 2016 race. Trump was able to win all of these 3 states by less than 1 percentage point. But then we saw in 2018, the Democrats winning statewide races for the Senate as well as governorship in all of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and going to be giving these as a lean to the Democrats in each instance. You could maybe even make a case that Michigan and Pennsylvania might be a little bit safer than Wisconsin. We'll see how this all plays out in 2020, but expecting these three states to be vital to whoever goes on and wins the presidency. If the Democrats win all three of these states, they're almost certainly going to win. And if the Republicans win all these three states, then they're probably going to win as well. Although it could be a little bit more difficult, even if the Republicans were able to keep these three states, if they then lost states like in Arizona, for instance, or maybe North Carolina, then you could get a situation where the Democrats might be able to still win the presidency, even if they lose these Rust Belt areas. So now we're going to move down into the Southeast, starting with Florida, always close in presidential elections. It seems like it's always within around 1 or so percentage point, one way or another. Obama won the state twice. Then Trump flipped it in 2016. We expect it to be very close again in Florida in 2020. And I'd probably give this as more of a slight lean potentially to the Republicans than a slight lean to the Democrats, but still feels like a pretty clear-cut, true toss-up type state. So we're going to be leaving that one as gray. Moving up one state to Georgia, going to be giving it as a slight lean over to the Republicans. This is, in terms of these southeastern states, the one that's most competitive. It has some of the more electoral college votes here at 16 in contrast to some of its neighboring southeastern states. And a lot of that is because the population area in and around Atlanta is continuing to trend more so towards the Democrats, which is helping them make these statewide races even more competitive. Clinton actually was respectably close to Trump in 2016, losing by around 5 or so percentage points. Of course, they had a governor's race in 2018 that was very competitive within just a couple of percentage points. We expect the Senate race in Georgia to be interesting in 2020, probably pretty competitive, as well as how things play out in that presidential race. So going to be giving that one right now still as a slight lean over to the Republicans. Moving up one state to North Carolina, Obama was able to win North Carolina in his first go-round, came up short in his second try in 2012, and then in 2016, of course, Trump was able to win it by around 3 or so percentage points. This state here, they've elected a Democratic governor in recent years, and there's also likely to be a very competitive 2020 Senate race in the state of North Carolina, and one that both parties are going to be keeping a close eye on. And I actually put this one right in the middle here as a toss-up. Again, if you're going to make the argument where you have to put it as a lean to one side or the other, probably just a slight lean to the Republicans in a presidential race, but Trump doesn't necessarily have great net approval right now. He's underwater in the state of North Carolina. Depending on who the Democrats put up, they could possibly pick up this state, and it's likely to be very competitive, so going to be keeping that one in the toss-up range. Moving up one state to Virginia, this one has been trending towards the Democrats. I'm a little bit less confident than maybe some others are with the state of Virginia, given some of the controversies that have swirled around some of the upper-tier Democrats that are within this state. But the Democrats did very well in the state of Virginia in 2018, flipping some congressional districts, and not necessarily great numbers here for Trump, although maybe not quite as bad as you might expect, where Trump actually has currently just a slightly better net approval in Virginia in contrast to states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowa. So that's also something to keep in mind. And another thing that was really helping the Democrats in Virginia back in 2016 is the fact that they had the Virginia senator running as the vice president, which probably boosted up the numbers a little bit more than what you'd typically get. So going to be just giving that one as a slight lean here over towards the Democrats. And now we're getting into the states that are considerably safer for the Democrats, including that District of Columbia, very safe dark blue, as well as Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York, Vermont, and then statewide in Maine, and then the 1st Congressional District in Maine. And now the 2nd Congressional District, the Democrats were able to flip it in 2018, large in part thanks to ranked choice voting. And because of ranked choice voting, I also believe that it's likely to be very competitive in 2020. Maybe ranked choice voting makes the difference and allows the Democrats to pick up that one electoral vote. Going to be keeping it as a gray toss-up. And then going down to New Hampshire, not a lot of love in this state for Hillary Clinton. She was barely able to hold on to it in her run, obviously, against Donald Trump in 2016. But in general, this is a relatively consistent result, or you'd expect it to be statewide in these races for the Democrats. It is a bit more of a discussion to be had in New Hampshire in contrast to some of these other northeastern states, but Trump's numbers are really bad right now in New Hampshire. The most recent numbers that we have, he's 19 points to the negative net approval, which is one of his lower numbers among states where he was actually relatively competitive in 2016, but going to be putting it one step here, obviously below dark blue. It's not quite as safe in that category. You could maybe even make an argument to put it one step over to lean Democratic, but going to be putting it between those two. And if I'm not mistaken, that is every single result that I wanted to touch on and do a bit of a discussion here. So this is my current 2020 map projection, where I have 278 electoral votes in the pockets for the Democrats, 197 for the Republicans, and 63 in that true toss-up range. Of course, there is still enough in the lean Democratic pool or lean Republican pool where it could be all the way over to potentially a blowout situation for the Democrats if they are able to pick all those up, or Donald Trump winning his election bid again and maybe surprising folks yet again in 2020 and getting enough electoral votes to reclaim his seat as the president of the United States. So this is how I currently have things playing out. If you like this kind of content, I encourage you to click that subscribe button, and I hope to see you guys back here for future videos.